This is Report to Wyoming.
This show targets local issues that matter right here in Natrona County, where we talk to real people about their thoughts and ideas. Today I talked to Katie Reid. She is the Cancer Coalition Coordinator here in Casper. We talk about cancer prevention and then survivorship, along with the local resources we have here in Casper for people interested in knowing more about that. Just as I was getting started checking our volume levels, I always ask guests a silly question, and I asked Katie what she had for breakfast. Normally, I edit that out, but it actually led the conversation to the topic at hand, so...
I had a sweet potato.
Mm-hmm. What?
Yeah, we got Texas Roadhouse. I drove back from Laramie I was coming back from a conference yesterday. So my boyfriend hasn't gone shopping because I haven't been there to cook for him.
I know how that goes, yeah.
So we got Texas Roadhouse, and I always order a sweet potato as one of my sides so I can have it for breakfast.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm wondering if this segues into our conversation about cancer prevention. Mm-hmm. Is there some influence there?
Yeah, so I have just always liked eating potatoes. My dad calls me a carbivore. I eat carbs mostly. But yeah, sweet potatoes have lots of vitamins and minerals, and my mom always encouraged us to eat them. I'm sure Texas Roadhouses with sugar and butter and marshmallows aren't the best choice, but it's better than sugar cereal. So
right.
And I just read a study last week. Oh my gosh, time is running away from me so quickly. But it said that cutting out just 10% of overly processed foods can increase your cancer prevention or make a major impact on cancer prevention. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it was 10% cut out makes a huge difference for cancer prevention. So I am trying to be more conscious about that.
Two thoughts. One, I just relate so much. I've never met a carb I didn't like. Two, it's funny how in my lifetime it kind of went from maybe these processed foods have something to do with cancer to now it's pretty definitive. Studies are just ultimately saying that what you eat has a big impact on your risk of cancer, especially refined sugar. That's something as a parent now that I've just seen it in academic studies over and over and over again. It's proven to be terrible for you. And that's, a bummer for some of us to hear. But let's start with a little bit more about you. If you want to tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
So my name is Katie Reid. I'm the Wyoming Cancer Coalition Coordinator. Say that 4 times fast. I dare you. And I stumbled into this role, in all honesty, in September of 2022, so last year, after moving to Casper and spending a year up here working for one of the TV stations. I just decided I needed a change. I was having some health issues of my own and have always had an interest in health in general and wellness, and really wanted to make a difference for other people, and saw this job posted for the Casper and Natrona County Health Department and was like, I'm going for it. And what do you know, it worked out.
Oh, wow. Okay. And are you in Laramie then, or here in Casper?
I'm based here in Casper.
Okay. You said last September or the September before that?
So I moved here September of 21. September of 22, I started this job.
Gotcha. Okay. So you haven't been in it long, but no. I've already seen you out and about doing lots of things. So that's exciting. You were at the Bosom Buddies Christmas party.
That was so much fun.
I know. Lauren Groves is amazing. I'm really looking forward to talking to her and her husband soon about gardening. But then I saw you at the park greenhouse cutting.
Lots of gardening going on. It's actually because of a project the coalition is doing right now, which circles back to healthy eating, funnily enough. Is that a word?
Funnily, yeah. I like it. Yeah, we get it. You can say that.
But so we as a coalition have a 5-year cancer plan, and it's all data-based. And it's supported by the state. Governor Gordon has helped us and signed off on this cancer plan. So it is Wyoming approved. I had nothing to do with it, so I can't be blamed if people don't like it. But one of our goals is to encourage healthy eating and physical activity behaviors in people, because we know both of those things do reduce your risk for cancer. It's not a guarantee, but it sure helps. And so our prevention work group came together last year in 21 or in 22, late 21, early 22, and created a thing called the Wyoming Tomato Project. And the goal of that was just to provide free tomato seedlings to people across the state to encourage that healthy eating and a little bit of physical activity with the gardening. So this year I took over and got to do the project. And we went from distributing 100 seedlings last year to we have 1,500 being grown this year. And we're giving about 1,500 to students as well to grow themselves.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay. When did Gordon sign off on this? Do you know? Pop
So
quiz.
the cancer plan, the most recent one is 2021 to 2025. So I'm going to assume it was late 2020, early 2021 that it got signed off and everyone put their weight behind it.
And then as far as physical activity, what kind of things are you guys doing to help, I guess, promote that?
So our big thing right now is that tomato project, just encouraging people to get out and garden. Kind of each year we focus on a different part of the plan. And so I'm definitely open to more physical activity ideas. For some of those students, I am going through and doing a little short lesson on healthy eating. We know red foods tend to be really good for your heart health. We know purple foods are good for your brain and cognitive stuff.
Oh, tell me more. Oh, yeah.
So not always, it's not a perfect rule, but it's a good rule of thumb, especially for children. Colors tend to coordinate with different parts of our body and different health aspects and benefits. And so we're teaching them about that and then about physical activity. We know strength training, weightlifting is really good for bone density and just helping keep your muscles strong. We know stretching is good for flexibility, mobility, being able to walk around and get up and sit down without having to grunt when we stand up, because I do that. I'm guilty of it. I can't pass judgment on anyone. So just talking about all those different benefits to all the different ways we can eat and all of the ways we can move, because it's easy to forget that, especially as we get older and sit at a desk all day.
Which I do. Yeah, it's awful. I'm trying. I have a desk at home that's a standing desk, and I'm thinking about switching it out because I want to be here for the recording studio so much better. So that's been challenging because I used to have a job where I was on my feet all day and I walked a lot. It's hard to just sit all day.
It's really hard. I asked for a treadmill for Christmas and put it under my desk at work. So,
oh, that's really nice. Can you walk and type and all of that at the same time? I'm only asking for myself.
I can. I can't write though. And I'm a hand note taker. So sometimes I have a thought and it doesn't apply in that exact moment. And I have to write it down and I have to step off of it to write my thought down, or my handwriting turns to chicken scratch and I can't handle when my handwriting doesn't look nice.
What else are you focused on in terms of, would you say it's mostly cancer prevention or cancer awareness?
It's a little bit of everything, honestly. So going back to that cancer plan, there are 4 major priorities, I guess you could say, and those are our work groups. We split them up and have people with vested interest in those topics working on the goals that fall under them. And so those are prevention, early detection / screening, survivorship, and childhood cancer. And so each of our work groups is constantly doing something, and it's hard to keep track of all of it, especially only being here for a handful of months. I haven't even gotten to jump onto all of the meetings, which is a bummer, but eventually I'll get there. And so there's always something going on, whether it is just raising awareness in general of cancer is a thing, anyone can get it. Here are some proactive steps you can take, and it turns more prevention. Here's how to get screened or when you can get screened. Wyoming just in March changed some of the wording in laws about screenings for colorectal cancer. So now people 45 and up qualify for coverage for those colorectal screenings. And previously it was 50. So we're keeping up with the national changes in those requirements and recommendations. You were diagnosed with cancer. As soon as you're diagnosed, you're considered a survivor. So our survivorship work group is really not just for people who had cancer and beat cancer. It's anyone who has been diagnosed, plus their family and friends and people who are impacted by that. And I think pretty much everyone knows someone who has either been diagnosed or has been impacted by cancer in some way. So a lot of good work. It's really all-encompassing. It's kind of crazy when you get into it.
So you're drinking from a fire hose. That's when I started my job here. They said,
Yes.
you're going to get a lot. It's going to be coming at you really fast. Try to absorb some of this.
Yep.
Yes.
I've also heard it described as building the airplane while I'm already flying.
But it's fun when you have the energy and it starts clicking, I think. That's really rewarding and satisfying. Plus, what you do is so meaningful.
Yeah, and even if it's indirect, like I don't necessarily hear from folks who have been through the screenings or who have benefited from anything we've done. But just knowing that there's that potential is energizing in itself. And just like, yeah, I may not ever see the results of it, but I know I've done what I could instead of just sitting around thinking I should do something.
And as far as screening goes, where does someone go to find exactly what screenings they should get when?
I would recommend looking at the American Cancer Society website. They have a lot of resources and talk about literally every type of cancer. Most places you look, it's pretty easy to find like a list of what screenings you should get. And for most people, your insurance should be covering those screening procedures. That might change because I know it's in the courts right now. But right now, as it stands, your insurance is supposed to cover all cancer screenings if they are on time and following that schedule. You know, we do have situations where you have to be screened early. I'm going in for colonoscopy Monday. And it's not because we're like, oh, you have cancer. I could. We'll find out, I guess. But that one, my insurance isn't required to cover the same way that it would be if I was 45. And for people who are underinsured or uninsured, the Wyoming Department of Health has the Wyoming Cancer Program, which is similar to the coalition. We work together literally all the time, but they are able to offer vouchers for folks who are uninsured or underinsured for breast, cervical, and colorectal screenings.
Oh, okay. Now I'm like, maybe I should. You can't see her face right now, but she looks like she's in her 20s.
I'm 23.
Okay. So I should probably get one of those.
So
I'm 29.
A colonoscopy, I mean, so it's conflicting because the national recommendation is 45 and up. You need to get a colonoscopy every 5 years unless they see something weird. 5 to 10 unless they see something weird. However, a lot of studies right now are coming out saying that people under 45, mostly people in their 20s and 30s, are being diagnosed with colorectal cancer at like an astonishing rate. Kind of scary, actually, when you start reading the data. But unless you have symptoms, you're probably not going to be able to get that colonoscopy because they're very expensive and you have to go under anesthesia for them. And it's just like one of those things. So I'm planning on recording kind of my prep process because on Sunday I'll have to go no food, only liquids, no food dyes, and take a bunch of pills so that I clear out my bowels, which is gross. And
It's very attractive.
yeah, prep is everyone's least favorite part. But I was planning on filming it just because it's changed a little bit. It used to be you had to drink like a big jug of liquid that helped clear you out. I think they still do that for some folks, but I got pills. And I have to I have 2 packs of 12 pills that I have to take. And in a certain amount of time and with a certain amount of water.
Is this like a laxative?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
This could be kind of uncomfortable.
it's, which again is why they say prep is the worst part because you have to deal with the laxative effects. But I have some really weird symptoms. I had a gastroenterologist, which is the people who do a colonoscopy, so a stomach specialist. When I told him my symptoms, he was like, "You're a mystery. We're going to get you in for one as quick as we can." So my symptoms, they were like, "Yep, we're going to check you out." But other times they might be like, "Let's try X, Y, and Z first." Especially for us younger folks. Like, that's just not how it works right now.
Well, I hope you get a good diagnosis.
Yeah.
No diagnosis, I guess is what you'd say.
We'll see. I want answers more than anything at this point. Like, whatever it is, we can work through it. I just am really tired of feeling crappy.
And I guess this might be just it says more, I guess, about the early detection process, what I'm going to say next, but maybe finding something isn't the worst thing in the world if it's in its early stages.
Yeah. So for most cancers, not all, but for most cancers, if they're found early, which usually means stages 1, sometimes stage 2, the average, if you take all cancers found early, it's like a 95% 5-year survival rate, which means you survive longer than 5 years after it was detected. For quite a few cancers, if it's found, there are mitigations, there are things you can do to get rid of it. So like prostate cancer, you can have your prostate removed. Breast cancer, you can have your breast removed. Colon cancer, it's usually polyps that they find, and they can remove those polyps before it turns into something worse. So there's usually something that can be done. And even if there's not a procedure to remove the source of cancer, there's radiation and there's chemotherapy and things to help mitigate it and try to get rid of it or extend your life if it is found early.
What else is kind of on your radar?
So for all young people and for parents, HPV vaccines are super important. They have existed longer than the iPhone has existed, and they are proven to prevent cancers caused by HPV. They won't necessarily prevent HPV. They will prevent the cancers to like a 98% success rate. And those cancers impact men and women. Typically, when we think HPV, we think cervical cancer. Oral pharyngeal, which is the back of your throat, has now overtaken cervical as the most common HPV-caused cancer. There's no test to diagnose oral pharyngeal cancer, though dentists and doctors and mouth specialists are working to create processes and to check for signs that they can see. There's no test that's been like approved. So that's like really scary. And there are other cancers still that you get from HPV, but that is so important to make sure you're vaccinated.
And it's a series of 3, right?
It's 2 or 3 depending on what age you get them at. And HPV is an STI, but getting vaccinated doesn't mean you're having sex. It's just 80% of people will get HPV at some point in their life.
80. Okay. When I was younger, they said 1 and 2, but
80% of people will have some form of HPV. If it's the right, quote unquote, strain, it will go away on its own. Our bodies will fight it off. If it's not, it will turn into cancer.
I knew a girl in grad school who ended up with cervical cancer, and she's still alive and well today. They caught it early enough, but it was like, wow, this happens to people when they're very young. She was probably 22, super scary.
Very scary. And in general, talk about your sexual health with your partners. Because HPV is so prevalent, you'll never know if it was your boyfriend or you or someone else who got it first and who spread it to who. And there's no test for HPV for men. Only women can get it when they get their PAPs. So you're only going to know with a 3-year spacer between each test. So you can't attribute it to someone. You'll never know who it is. And it can manifest, like you could have it, it could be given to you, and you don't see it for years down the line. So it might not even be if you have a steady partner. It might not be that partner. It could have just manifested after a little bit.
How does HPV manifest itself?
So since it's a virus, it can sit dormant in your body like a lot of other viruses for a while. And then all of a sudden it just like spikes up in production. Usually when it does that, hopefully you find it on a test because it like spiked at the right time. But you'll never know, and you'll never know if the strain you have, there's no test for what type of HPV you have. So unless you start having symptoms or unless you're getting screened for that cervical cancer or you're noticing like, oh, I have a lump on my neck or something to that, something like that, you won't know if it's HPV that can go away or HPV that causes cancer. And there's no way to like, when they test for HPV, they're just testing across the board. They're not going to be able to say like, your HPV is the cancer HPV because we don't know.
So there's a lot to be determined there. But
yeah, it's
the
very
vaccine, that's what the proactive step would be, is make sure you get your vaccine. And can men get the vaccine too?
Yep. So it's for everyone. The HPV vaccine is encouraged for everyone. The standard age that most people get it is like 11 to 12 you get your first one. It is safe to get as young as 9 years old. And so there's a big push right now in the cancer healthcare world to encourage parents to get it younger. We know that if you have finished the series by age 12, your immune system receives the vaccine better and is going to use it more if you get HPV, and it will protect you more if you get the vaccine younger.
Plus, practically, I'm thinking about my daughters who are very young, and I'm not worried about sexual activity right now. Mm-hmm. But ideally, they get the vaccine before they're interested in that. Mm-hmm. Which I remember when I was in high school, my mother did not want me to have the vaccine because it was, like birth control. What do you need that for? You're not having sex.
Right. Well, and I hate to be that person, but even if your child isn't actively seeking out sex, there are still situations where they're being forced into it.
Right.
And HPV can spread through kissing. So if someone has mouth warts, like your grandpa has mouth warts and he kisses your kid, they can still get HPV. It's one of those things where it spreads not crazy easily. It's not like COVID or the flu, but it does spread pretty easily for an STI, I suppose. And so it's better to be safe and to have that preventative care, especially since we don't know
80%.
80% of people have it or have had it at some point in their lives. And you never know which version you're going to get, if it's going to be cancer causing or if it's going to be one your body can just fight off. So is that a risk you want to take?
Now, I've been selfish, sorry, listeners, because I've been saying, what should I be concerned with in our age? But overall, do you know what the top cancers are? Or the most deadly cancers? That's probably the way I'd phrase that.
Most deadly cancers are going to be those ones that don't have screening tests. Lung cancer, you can't screen for. Pancreatic cancer, you can't screen for. So there are quite a few, actually. Most cancers don't have a solid set screening. And when it comes to that, you just have to really pay attention to your body. I was having stomach pains, and that's why I went and saw my doctor and why I'm now getting a colonoscopy. It was just persistent pain in my lower stomach. I figured it was oh, it's my period. Oh, I was sick. Oh, I'm just fighting something off. I excused it for a long time, but if I kept excusing it, who knows what it could turn into.
Right.
So if you're feeling something's off, and frequently lots of cancers manifest far away from where the cancer actually is. So you could have skin cancer, and yes, you'll have the mole, but you might start having pain somewhere else in your body because of it, because it spreads, and it spreads through your blood, so it can spread quickly. So you just pay attention, keep an eye on your body. If you start having weird or consistent symptoms, talk to your doctor. It doesn't hurt to give them a call and be like, hey, this is weird, nothing in my life has changed. What is happening? What do you think I should do?
When a person has cancer, are there signs, generally speaking, a high white blood cell count or? No.
It's...
Darn it.
Cancer has existed for so long, but it's still such a mystery to people because it's different in everyone. So for some, there are some things you can do, like a mammogram, to see if you can see those abnormal cells. Or you can, biopsy. If you have a weird lump or you have a mole, you can biopsy it, but there's not a one-size-fits-all way to check.
And is it fairly genetic?
Some cancers are, and some aren't, and even the genetic ones, just because it's not in your family doesn't mean it won't be or you can't get it. We know breast cancer, there are certain genes that make you more prone to getting it. Just because you have the gene doesn't mean you will. It means you're much higher risk, but just because you don't have that gene doesn't mean you won't get it.
I read somewhere that 1 in 2 people have cancer. Is this about right?
I don't know if it's exactly 1 in 2, but I would say at least 1 in 2, if not every person, has been impacted by it in some way.
Right. We know someone, but getting it, I think it's the top killer of Americans is heart attacks, followed by cancer.
Yeah, that sounds pretty close to right. Sometimes it's scary to work in the field and read all the statistics, but medicine is advancing every day. They're working on AI detection for certain cancers right now. Like, people are working hard and putting money into figuring it out. When they'll figure out every single one, who knows? But when we have those, we need to take advantage of the ones we have. We know there are not cures, but mitigation practices, and we know there are screening tests, and all we can do is follow those recommendations. The more of us that do, the better off the whole community is, because we'll have that data to support, like, hey, there's a high cancer count of XYZ cancer here. That's usually caused by environmental factors like exposure to asbestos. We should go check on that. Like, we should make change. So the more we all screen, the better off our community is.
As far as the survivorship aspect of it, once someone has been diagnosed, do they look to nonprofits like you guys for advice, steps moving forward, what to do?
I think quite a few survivors after diagnosis do seek those resources. The Cancer Coalition is less of a survivor resource and more of a support system for providers and survivors, but we really try to create change for others, whereas you have Jason's Friends for childhood cancer patients and Olivia Caldwell Foundation, and Bosom Buddies for people who have had mastectomies. And those organizations are really survivor-focused, while survivorship is something we definitely value and want to make an impact on. With how the coalition is set up, we can't be like giving out money to folks, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But survivorship is important. One thing I know the coalition is working on right now is creating a repository of survivorship resources, whether that's mental health aid, financial aid, just financial services, so you can talk to an accountant about, like, how do I get through all of these costs? Whether that's gas cards, whatever it is, we're trying to create a place where people can go and all of it is there, because we have done the studies. Based on our study, a good chunk of people who received a diagnosis had questions and either didn't know where to go to find those answers, or it was too hard to find those answers. So they started to and just kind of gave up. And so that's a big negative, I guess, for the state, is people don't know where to go to find that help. And so we really want to figure out a way to make that accessible to folks.
Yeah, I've got to imagine it's just so overwhelming. So where do you even start? And then there's so many aspects of it. The emotional toll, the financial devastation, just the fear of, am I doing the right thing? Do I have the right doctor?
Well, and in Wyoming, we have a handful of cancer centers spread around, but if it's a specialty cancer or if it's a child who has cancer, you're going out of state. End of discussion. There's no childhood cancer center in Wyoming. We know that. That's a fact. We know that the cancer centers in state, for some people, it's a further drive to stay in state than it is to go out of state. So why wouldn't they go out of state? And so we know a lot of survivors in our state are not seeking that help in state, or seeking medical help in state. So then when they come back to the state, they don't know what their resource options are here in Wyoming. They know what Utah has. They know what Colorado has. They know what Mayo Clinic has. But they don't know what's here and what's available to them within their communities.
Which in Casper, what do we have?
Oh my goodness. Casper is one of those cities that has a lot, because we're central, so we can do a lot of good for a lot of places. So we have the Jason's Friends Foundation right here in Casper. We have the Olivia Caldwell Foundation right here in Casper. We have Bosom Buddies, which is based out of here. We have Rocky Mountain Oncology. We have Gastroenterology, which does colonoscopies. We have other specialists in town who do colonoscopies. I don't want to shout out just one, but there are services here in town. You have dermatologists in Casper. We have the hospital right down the road. And a lot of our communities just don't even have access to a hospital. So if something post-treatment went wrong, they'd have to drive hours to get any hospital help. So all of those things. Plus, we have the Cancer Coalition. We have one of the Wyoming Cancer Program. They're called Cancer Resource Services. And we have a representative here in Casper. She covers multiple counties, but she's located here. So she has a lot of knowledge for what's in town. Yeah, we have a lot. We're very lucky in Casper to have what we have.
How has this personally affected you? Learning all of this, knowing it's kind of heavy.
Yeah, some days when I'm doing research or trying to work on a project, it's hard. It gets you down. But I try to think of it as like, I am doing that legwork and I am holding that mental load so that other people don't have to. And so that we can make that difference. Because if you don't know, you can't make change. You have to have that knowledge to support whatever you're doing, whatever ideas you have to have that background-based knowledge of like, here's what's there, here's what we need, here's how we move forward. And so, having all the data and all that information in your head is like, yeah, it's scary, but it also helps you have informed conversations. Like, if someone, I've talked to people about like, here's why you need to get a PAP, even though it's scary and you don't want to have to like do that with a doctor.
That thing looks like a wine opener to me. Sorry, men who've never seen it. It's like, don't put that anywhere near my body.
We had one of our nurses at the Casper Health Department. Well, I think it was multiple, but they decorated a handful of them to look like reindeer for Christmas. Oh. And so now that's all I see.
Nice and friendly. Well, they are. They're pretty, yeah. But I'm not trying to scare you from getting a PAP. It's just that we have to have these conversations so going into it, hey, it's a clinical setting.
It's not comfortable, but it's also not the most painful procedure you'll have done.
That's true.
And everyone's pain tolerance is different, obviously. But on the bright side, it's the most uncomfortable part, in my opinion, is just having something hold you open. My boyfriend watches the show Letterkenny. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, okay. My husband loves those crazy. I think they're Canadians.
They're Canadians.
Yeah.
They have an episode where they get a new doctor in their little 5,000-person town, and all of the guys are scared to see him because they have to have I don't remember what they call it, finger up their bum.
Yeah.
And it's a prostate exam. It's a version of a prostate exam. And all of the girls are giving the guys crap of like, you're worried about a finger? And they like go through and make a guy lay on his back and like explain in very good detail actually what happens at a PAP and like guilt the guys into doing their exams.
I like though that pop culture's kind of taken on this discussion because in a way it's sort of letting people kind of poke fun at it makes it less scary.
Absolutely. And I think in general, cancer has always been, before COVID at least, the big C word. Like, you didn't say it, you didn't speak about it. And it's something we really, really, really need to be talking about more and having conversations, not just with our family, but like with our friends and with people that we know and love about, like, have you done your screenings? We know at age 21, women start getting PAPs. How are you getting your PAPs? We know you need to have your mouth, like you go to the dentist every year. Are you going? Because your dentist is checking for oral cancer.
Oh, that's good to know.
So like when they like feel up your throat and around your jaw, they're feeling for lumps for you to see if there's anything.
I'm overdue on this. Okay.
Or if your lymph nodes are like
other people
swollen.
Listening are enlightened too.
So like it is a community
I just figured
effort.
It was cavity prevention.
I mean, it is.
And I hate going because I always have cavities.
Me too.
But I'm terrified of cancer. So.
Yeah. And is cancer scary? Absolutely. I'm not trying to say it's not a scary thing to discuss, but the more we're willing to have vulnerable conversations, like me talking about getting a colonoscopy at age 23, like the more normalized it becomes to just like do it and talk about it. Like if your friends aren't doing it, you need to be holding them up to count. Like, why aren't you? You're scared? I'll go with you. I will drive you to your appointment. We need to go. Like it is so important. We know those 5-year survival rates. I said it's about 95% for most cancers, not for all. For most, if it's caught early, it plummets if it's not caught early. because by stage 4, we know stage 4 is pretty much a terminal diagnosis.
Right.
Again, not always, and sometimes it's not immediate. It's like, okay, I've lived with stage 4 for this long. Okay, I have stage 4 breast cancer. I'm going to have a mastectomy. We know that cancer causes more cancer. So you might do what you need to do and have it prevented for that time. Once you have it, it's more likely to come back. Mm-hmm. So it's better to catch it early and get rid of it early and stay on top of it than to ignore it and let it get worse and have it come back worse.
Right. We sometimes just avoid on thinking about because it's so unpleasant, or we know someone who, like in my experiences as a kid, it was grandpa has cancer, cut to grandpa's dead. Mm-hmm. Like it didn't take very long. I also kind of felt like cancer ran in my family, but then you start talking to other people and it's like, no, it's getting everybody. So it's like, okay, there's clearly things that we're doing, not just America either, but just globally, that are causing it. I don't know. It's a weird, mysterious thing. And so I think
it's so weird and mysterious. And we know there are some factors like healthy eating, but also exposure to certain chemicals. So it's like, if you have one of those jobs, who knows? You're more likely to get it, but you could live your whole life and not be diagnosed. Like, it's so weird. And like I said, there's so much research going into prevention and cures and just figuring out where the heck it came from in the first place, because we really don't know.
Right. I think I've definitely heard cigarettes, alcohol,
mm-hmm.
and stress. Mm-hmm. Those are pretty big, right?
Well, yeah. And we know what
big
cancer
factors.
is. Like, if you want to get, again, I'm not going to get technical because I don't have any of the classification, certification, any of it. But we know at a base level what cancer is abnormal cells that have just mutated wrong, but because of their mutation become deadly. And they spread quickly because they're mutated. Our cells already regenerate very quickly. Mutated cells regenerate just as quickly, if not more quickly. But that's all it is it's an abnormal cell. No one can control what their cells are doing. They're doing things in our bodies at this minute that we don't know what they're doing. Like, and it takes a whole lot of them to build us, and it takes a whole lot of them to build up like any of the actions we're doing. And so as much as it's like, yes, we know these things, there's a lot that's just unknown. And all we can do is learn and take care of ourselves and do all of those preventative activities. So quit smoking or don't smoke, eat good food, exercise regularly, try to avoid alcohol, get that HPV. Also your hepatitis vaccines. We know hepatitis C causes cancer. So keep on top of those, get your screenings when you can, and that's really all we can do right now. But the more people who care and who talk about it, the more research will go into it.
This has been Report to Wyoming, presented in the public interest by Town Square Media.